left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy!
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
I think I might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
Do.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
well, we're back. I think streaming live. We've had problems, folks. I'm not going to kid you. The service that Matt is getting from Optimum. I hope you don't mind, Matt. If I
blame James Dolan.
Yeah, James Dolan is basically trying to stifle the show. So, what we're doing is I think going forward, we're going to try and just go out on YouTube. That may help. Not 100% sure about that, but that's what we're going to try and do. And we will post the interview with Mark Allen Derry, the full first half of the show. We're going to post it and maybe we'll premiere it right after the program today. So bear with us. I know you're frustrated. You are not nearly as frustrated as we are. I can assure you of that. I can assure you that there is no one more annoyed by this than the person that you are hopefully watching right now. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 608 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Lucas from Minnesota.
Lucas from Minnesota. What's on your mind, Lucas?
I got to say one thing. First of all, you're one of two things that my 4-year-old son requests before bedtime, which is scaring me a little bit.
I understand.
Congratulations. You got into his head.
I'm great with kids. What's his name?
Everett.
Everett. It's time to go to bed, buddy. Good night.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We need that. Second of all, concerned about the election cycle coming up. I'm a delegate in Minnesota, or gone through our caucus to get to the district delegation, and they're doing everything online. And it's a weird Google document they've sent out for online voting, and the way they're paring down delegates to get to state is looks like it's going to be you submit a 500-word description of yourself and your platform, and instead of having some sort of caucus where you're going to go through and actually argue these things out, it's going to be centralized totally to the organization of the DFL, which Minnesota's better than some, but seems like we're losing democracy really, really fast. And I have no idea how to try to counter that or push against that kind of stuff. And obviously this seems like a really important time to do that.
Well, I mean, I got to be honest with you. I don't have an answer. Like, I don't know how you do this. I don't know how. I don't know what the answer is. And it is I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's like maybe what they should have is there should be a forum maybe where you can go in and do this, but then how do you police it? Who's the right person? You know what I mean? Where you could go actually and interact with other people. Like every solution I come up with, there's problems. You could do a huge, live streaming thing, but as you know, we've experienced today, what if it collapses in the middle? I mean, yeah. There's so many things that we have that are coming up that we did not have contingencies for. One of the things that's happening tomorrow in Wisconsin is the Republican Party is forcing the primary to happen tomorrow. They are appealing the decision of the courts to allow an extension on the absentee votes. I mean, it's a total disaster. And yes, I think the important thing, and there may be other solutions out there. I'm not aware of them. And like, I'm not even aware, like I couldn't tell you exactly even what the process you're going through is like when we don't deal with this. So it's, I think the important thing is that people like yourself who are directly involved in these situations, make sure that everybody is engaged and paying attention, and that the worst thing that could come out of this is that it sets certain precedents for what happens afterwards. There's no doubt, our democracy is being hurt by the coronavirus. And I don't know, I am sure that there are some better steps that can be taken than are being taken now, but I for the life of me, I don't know what they are. I mean, even when you do absentee ballots and you do vote by mail, it disenfranchises black people, brown people at higher rates than it does white people. If you were to do it, I don't know what the answer is. I really don't. In Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, they have, I don't even know how to measure like a 1,000th of, I think they have 1,500 precincts that are open normally. Maybe it's 500 and they're down to 5. I mean, I don't even know who you're going to get to, work in these things. I mean, and then you have a party that is fighting against it. And, I don't imagine that the DFL is staffed by, a ton of people who could sit around and come up with like, well, perhaps I could build this technology. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the answer is. I agree with you. This is happening. And there definitely has to be, a solution that may be better than others, but I don't know what that is. Do you?
No. And I guess same thing. My same sentiment to you is just, we have to do better, and that it's got to be, obviously the Democrats are going to figure this out on their own. So I think impregnating their system and then basically outflanking them and getting something as democratic as possible in place or being at least vigilant and pointing out the mistakes being made is really valuable at this time. So everybody else is in the same position as me. Please do so.
Yeah. And I would also say pushing for transparency generally is the best default position, right? Where like, if they've got to add more people to whatever committee looks at these things so that there's more transparency, that should be done. I don't know the specific process that they're using, so I can't really give specifics, but I would say pushing for transparency, trying to make all of these decisions and the processes out in the open as much as possible, understanding that there's going to be a diminishment of at least an ability to electioneer, but increasing the transparency, making note of what is being done and why, and making sure that when we return to some semblance of normalcy, that we don't retain any of these restrictions, because that's where this all happens in the worst case scenario. Appreciate the call, Lucas, and good luck with the 4-year-old going to bed. I can't imagine that's easy. And I would be depressed to think that that maybe just hearing my voice puts your kid to sleep. I mean, it wouldn't be unheard of. I've heard people tell me that many times. Calling from a 214 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 214. Gone. Calling from a 308. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 308. Okay. I hope this isn't me. Calling from a 614 area. 614. 614. Hello? Hello?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Am I coming through? Okay.
Yes, you're here.
Okay. I'm Eldon from Australia. Actually, I really did not expect to get through. I've been calling for like 6 months and I've never been answered once. But okay. So I don't really know what to. I guess
it just became a habit for you, and you decided just to keep calling, even though you had nothing specific to say.
Oh, I've had specific stuff to say, but most of those, like, it's become less relevant over time, and then it just became habitual now. Yeah. The last thing I really wanted to say was that, this is some time ago though now, but here in Australia, a very hated Minister of the Interior, Peter Dutton, got infected with COVID. Actually, like, I think you probably got this news over there that he infected a few people.
Yeah.
I was really hoping that he would fucking die, but he didn't die. So
well,
that's really the last thing that
I understand.
Oh, sorry for swearing, by the way.
That's all right. It's a lovely sentiment. But Boris Johnson is in the hospital with COVID. So I don't know if that helps.
Nobody who's got this thing who really deserves to die is going to die. So it's just let's not even hope. Anyway, so I've been tuning in, Sam, and I'm not exactly young, but I'm not really that old either. Like, I'm nearly 40, and I've been involved in politics for quite some time in my end of the world. I've lived actually in the United States. I've lived there for some time too, and I was involved sort of peripherally, a bit of activism over there with some friends, with some colleagues of mine. And I keep hearing, you guys have a very, you in particular, Sam, I don't know if it's because of your age, but you seem very hopeful about working within the system. I mean, I personally did really never expect Bernie to win. Like, I mean, he got pretty close and I was a bit surprised, but the way you're really earnest about his chances, and the guy who just called in before, who was like, what are we going to do? We're just giving out really serious. The Democratic Party, much like the ALP here, the Australian Labor Party here, I don't really, this is of course my opinion, but they don't really care about anything that's outside of the little cultural bubble. I mean, you guys understand that. I mean, the one sort of major policy effort that they've really taken seriously, that I can really think of, is really abortion, and that's because which is important. And I imagine that's because within the Democratic Party, women have become quite a lot more emancipated than any, but outside of that little really narrow scope, like unless it affects that very narrow PMC class, I don't really see them really taking interest. This morning, people were shocked about something that Tom Perez said about talking to AIPAC, I think it is, and about how the Democrats are not going to move at all, apparently, on Palestinian rights. And I just, could you help me out here? Like, I don't really, that's really surprising. I'm actually from a Muslim background myself. My father's from Egypt. And so we paid a lot of attention to Palestine over time. Like, and I've, back when a lot of people weren't really paying attention to politics, I was bawling my eyes out over Lebanon being bombed. And I've just, do people really actually hold out hope for this kind of, is that what's going on?
Well, I mean, I think it would be, I mean, I don't know what the other option is. I mean, like,
Right.
I can tell you that I was in Israel. If you're talking about the 1980 bombing of Lebanon?
No, I'm talking about the more recent one, I think 2004, I think it was. No.
I mean,
the reason where
listen,
where,
Tom Perez
yeah.
is the head of the DNC. Like when you say the Democrats and the PMC, I mean, like I understand what these words are, but you're not being terribly specific. And yes, Bernie Sanders had a chance to win. He didn't win in part because, I don't know, a myriad of things. I don't know if, I'm sure part of it was, at a crucial point, the campaign turned left when they should have turned right. I'm not talking ideologically. I'm just saying in terms of tactics. Or maybe it was just really bad luck. Obama stepped in, did some negotiating, brought people on board in an early fashion that was completely unanticipated. So yes, Bernie had a legitimate chance to win. I personally, I mean, this is where I am less maybe hopeful than you, is that I wasn't convinced that his winning the presidency would have the impact that some people thought, frankly. I mean, he was my favorite candidate. And then I think, I think they gave the best opportunity for some wholesale change, but I was a little bit more skeptical about what he would be able to do once in office. But I mean, what is the option? Like where I'm sitting here from my perspective, I can't comment on Australian politics, but I'm sitting here from my perspective, and there are going to be, I don't know how many extra, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 extra people, maybe more, who are going to die because of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. As bad as Joe Biden is in terms of policies that I disagree with, there is no doubt in my mind that their handling of this would have been different than Trump. There's no doubt in my mind. And that if Joe Biden had done as bad of a job of it, that the Democratic Party would not be in lockstep with him in the way that they are. And I'm not even necessarily saying that's as a compliment in some respects. It's just they just organize themselves in a different fashion so that there are some functions of government that are indisputably better. Right now, Donald Trump did not allow for the expansion of Obamacare. And if you've listened to this program for any extended period of time, you know that I have been critical of this, of the limits of Obamacare for a decade now. But Donald Trump had the ability to expand Obamacare, expand Medicaid to open up the enrollment period and refuse to do it. To get people health insurance, just so that they're not even worrying about stuff. Never mind whether they need it right now. Just said one thing to get off the table. Mm-hmm. These are material benefits to people. Are they where I want them to be? No. But are they better? Yes. Will they save lives? Undoubtedly. I mean, I could go on. We could talk about expansion of, apparently Mnuchin narrowed expanded on the exceptions of people who had to pay paid leave for companies, basically knocking out about another 40% of the country. So it's not only 70% of the country has exceptions as to whether they can get paid leave. I'm quite convinced the Democratic president wouldn't do that, regardless of who it was. Would Bernie Sanders be far more generous and aggressive in this situation than Joe Biden? Without a doubt. Well, would Elizabeth Warren? In my mind, without a doubt. There is a difference. And when you're talking about even marginal differences, when you're talking about a country of 300 million people, if the idea is to lessen suffering as measured by how many people suffer and to what extent, I'm sorry, there's just your perspective is disempowering and leads to more suffering. That's just a reality. I mean, I agree with your assessment. I agree with the limitations of the Democratic Party, but to say, therefore, it's quaint that you're fighting over these 5 yards or these 10 yards or these inches, I find that to be completely disempowering. That's not politics. That's just, I don't know. It's just, preening.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can understand that, but on the other way of looking at it is that you could be attempting to, one could attempt to derail the system by
how are you going to derail the system?
Participating in it.
As you know, how does lack of participation derail the system?
Actually compelled. Sorry, what was that?
How does lack of participation derail the system? Or I'm not saying that people shouldn't go out and protest. I mean, when there's any type of labor action, we're promoting it. I mean, I think we encourage protests. Obviously, there's a limitation to that right now.
This is probably a bit of a cultural difference, actually, because in Australia, when, if you choose, because voting here is compulsory, so if you choose not to, actually, the topic's starting to come up that government legitimacy is actually being eroded because fewer people of my generation and below are turning out to vote, actually, despite the fact that it is compulsory. So they're just taking the fines, which I suppose for a lot of people in our establishment could be quite alarming, but I suppose the calculus is probably a bit different for the United States.
It's completely different. They don't want you to vote here. That is there is every obstacle to voting. I mean, the Republican Party has forced a primary tomorrow in Wisconsin in the middle of the pandemic. They will not, they're suing to stop the extension of 5 days of the absentee ballots. I mean, in terms of voting, by not voting, all you're doing is doing their work. And it doesn't just exist with the Republican Party. Like I can tell you, the establishment of the Democratic Party, when it comes time to primaries, they don't want people voting either because the incumbents don't want people to vote. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know any other response to this other than to continue to fight. And that I'm not limiting what that fight is. I don't think it's, exclusively or primarily electoral. But to say if I sit this one out, it's going to do something. There's absolutely zero evidence in the history of this country that has been effective. Zero.
Well, what do you think of? I think I'm not sure what show. If I was watching TMBS, or if it was this. But what do you think of Michael's assessment the other day that America is essentially a failed state? Believe me, by the way, I believe that Australia is actually probably sooner than later going to end up a completely failed state. But what do you think of Michael's?
I mean, to be honest with you, I didn't hear it, but so what?
Right.
Okay, it's a failed state. Now what? I mean, I don't care.
Right.
It is the only state that I live in, and so okay, it's a failed state. Like I don't even know what that means. It doesn't matter to my assessment as to what we should do. What would I do differently if this was not a failed state versus a failed state?
Well, I suppose it would be more localism than really paying attention to federal politics.
Yeah. All right. Good luck with that.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that. I mean, do we need a better example of the importance of federalism than we've had in the past couple of weeks? Is New York State supposed to have a massive supply of ventilators? Is New York State supposed to have a pandemic team in China? Is New York State supposed? I mean, that is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, the thing is that they weren't prepared for this pandemic, so presumably they weren't prepared, regardless of Trump being there.
No.
So
why weren't we prepared? Because Trump removed the head.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he removed the.
Destroyed the entire apparatus that was supposed to warn us in advance about this. The entire apparatus destroyed. And then when it came time to, air bridge supplies, I got a story right here. So I don't know if you watched this the other day, but we played a clip of a general who was being asked a question of a reporter. Explain to us, what's going on with this so-called air bridge of supplies that they have sourced around the globe, personal protection equipment. And the guy said, yeah, we found it. We're flying them in. And then we're giving it to 6 to 8 distributors that are, my job's not to mess up the supply chain and screw up the market. And then they are basically running auctions to hand out this stuff. Some of it's going back to Europe. Some of it's going whoever's got the highest amount of money. No coordination as to where the greatest need is. This is all done with U.S. taxpayer dollars that sourced all this stuff. They're getting the markups, and it's basically price gouging. Now, I want you to listen to this story, okay? This is from Politico, from a week and a half ago. A longtime Republican fundraiser sent an email to his clients on Thursday. This is from March 27th, abruptly announcing that he would no longer be working for them. Over the last 14 days, I have built another business outside of politics, and I will be focusing my full attention there. He wrote on this email, which was obtained by Politico. The fundraiser, Mike Gula, started a new company, Blue Flame Medical, formed Monday in Delaware, according to state records. The website says it sells coronavirus testing kits, N95 respirator masks, and a wide selection of personal protective equipment and other hard-to-find medical supplies to beat the outbreak. How is this guy, who had no relationship whatsoever to medical supply business, has launched a company within a week and a half, 2 weeks ago? All his attachments were just political. He was a political fundraiser. Asked how he'd managed to procure such equipment when there are shortages in hospitals across the country, Gula said, I have relationships with a lot of people. He started Blue Flame. Was it with a medical professional? No, it was with John Thomas, a consultant who until recently worked as a chief strategist for Don Sedgwick, a Republican who ran against Katie Porter. Thomas declined to specify how he and Gula had managed to obtain masks that have become so rare. It's just relationship-based, he said. I can't say anything else. We're incredibly sensitive to price gouging, however, he said. Thomas said Blue Flame had already sold medical supplies to authorities in Georgia and other states. Police departments are almost begging for supplies, he said. How much you want to bet there was also international places that he sold this to? I don't want to overstate, but we probably represent the largest global supply chain for COVID-19 supplies right now. We're getting ready to fill 100 million unit mask orders. How do you think that they're doing this? How do you think these two guys have the ability to get the largest global supply for COVID-19 supplies up and running in 8 days? It is because the president of the United States has instructed our military to provide for these guys stuff so they can go and turn around and sell it, so much so that they're quitting their jobs and starting a new company, because he said he started Blue Flame in part because he wanted to leave behind the pressures of political work. I just want to live a private life. I want to get out of politics. This is robbery. This is robbery. And the fact that they are not supplying our medical personnel with equipment based upon need, but rather on their own profit, these people should go to jail. The people who enabled them should go to jail. So the idea that we're a failed state, yes, that's problematic. But the idea that that's going to change my assessment as to whether I say, Democrats, you should be doing oversight. Attorney generals in New York, you should be digging into this. Attorney generals in every state around the country. It doesn't matter. To say it's a failed state, fine, great. What am I going to do for the rest of the show? I mean, honestly, it's like it's just preening. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit what you call this. This is the way it's always been. Fine. I don't care. But to say at the point, the response is like, just going to check out. I'm going to sit over here on the sideline. I'm going to theorize about this. I mean, what's that going to do you? What's that going to do me? What's that going to do people? What's that going to do the doctors who are working, who are exposing themselves to it?
We are actually on the timeline. Like, we're looking at a 2.5 degree raise in temperature in about 10 years. It's almost guaranteed to be a bit larger than that as well.
I agree.
So, I mean, once climate change starts to strike, nobody, Democrats, at least Democrats, I mean, internationally, most sort of putatively center-left parties in the English-speaking world, they don't want to touch any of that shit. They want to wait until whole countries are underwater and mass immigration starts. That's going to bring with it diseases of its own.
I agree.
And different autocracies, on top of autocracies. So, I mean, what are we, we're still going to be kind of...
well, let me ask you this. Let me just ask you this, okay? I can agree with everything you're saying, except for, what is you not voting in Australia going to do? How are you, give me an example of what you're talking about that's going to break up the state.
That there are cultural differences. In Australia, I think a little, establishment figures quite a lot more than it would in the United States. I mean, especially since it means it's a financial hit, it's illegal. I mean, albeit not that serious, but, it is a fine and a potential call to court.
Right. So what do you suggest you've been following U.S. politics? What do you suggest? What's the response that in the
United States, I really, the left-wing political response would be, I guess, really highly atomized. I mean, it would be highly localized. I wouldn't really know.
How is the highly localized? How is the highly localized response going to stop climate change? How is the highly atomized?
It would be an effective response. No.
How would the highly atomized response in the United States stop the federal government? If we're going to play this out, right? Okay, fine, you won't be able to stop global climate change by being highly atomized and localized, but you can create a new system for when the crap hits the fan. Great. And how is that locally atomized thing going to keep itself to retain that system in light of these massive throngs of people who theoretically could be, refugees from, the South? I mean, how is that going to work?
I wouldn't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I wouldn't know either.
the
I
thing
can't
is
even
that,
come up.
like,
Let me put it this way: as a
there
writer
would be no
of
plan for any of this from any side.
right.
I mean, you
Well,
couldn't plan fully.
No, I understand.
No
but
one could be.
You
would
and
be
I
able to
can't
predict.
even come up with a theoretical idea as to how that's going to work. And
well,
so,
okay,
like,
if we want to play through this just theoretically, I would say that it would end up with the balkanization of the United States, and probably it would break apart, and states in different regions would probably form together to form new states, and that would be it. And it would be a cultural divide.
and so some of them, right, and some of them will be failed states very quickly. Some of them will be more aggressive.
Yeah.
And that balkanization will just create more war, and that's it. All right.
Yeah.
Listen,
I mean, you know, that might actually happen eventually anyway.
It could, but it's not, it's like, all right. I mean, listen, I'm here doing this because I think there is a purpose and that there's a point to fighting this. I'm not just here to do color commentary for the dissolution.
What economics is, right?
And so, I mean, I think there's at the very least some harm reduction that can take place and root to that inevitability if that's what it is. But so I appreciate the call. I love to hear from people from Australia. And, but, I don't know. I think like, okay, it's a failed state. That's great. So what? Nobody gets a cookie. I appreciate the call.
I think on TMBS we do go into a bit more of that, but I would say localism should be more than sitting on hold for 6 months. But
well, I mean,
that's not going to stop the greatest corporate heist in history.
Right. And it's not, listen, none of this stuff is mutually exclusive. You don't I think that localism is important. I think you need to be able to help people on the ground level. I mean, I know that we need broader government policy for a lot of things, but without a doubt, people can organize where they are. But I don't see why these things are mutually exclusive at all. And I just like, okay, it's a failed state. Great. I mean, that and a quarter, I don't know. Are there still phone booths? That and a quarter won't even get you a phone, a payphone. I mean, it's fine. Okay. But, I mean, has there ever been a time,
people seem to
be. What we're looking at is not, I mean, what we're looking at in terms of the failures of the Trump administration to deal with this crisis. Like Germany, they seem to have dealt with it fairly well. And it's doable. It's definitely doable. They obviously, we have cities with New York, highly dense city, highly international city, different cultural differences too, that make these things harder. But this could have been handled significantly better. Instead, we have a president who is telling people to just clamor for a drug that we don't really know if it works or not. Maybe it does, but here is John Berman on CNN speaking to that same Peter Navarro, who is convinced that Dr. Fauci is wrong, that there is science behind the, how do I pronounce that? Hydroxychloroquine that the president seems to be very excited about. It may turn out to be something, but there's no clinical research. We may have it in a month. But here he is explaining why, as a trade policy advisor, and a lot of people think he's a lunatic trade policy advisor, why he is in a position to challenge this public health official.
Would you take it if you got sick?
Would I take it if I got sick?
Yeah, would you take it knowing what you know now?
No, I would listen to my doctor about whether or not I should take it if I got sick. I would consult my doctor. I would not consult someone involved with trade policy. I would not consult with someone with trade policy, Peter.
I agree.
And my question, do you want a doctor?
Anything.
Do you want a medical doctor, an internist? Do you want an internist striking trade deals with Asian countries? Well, no, but that's my point.
But you're setting up a false narrative
here. I'm not.
Here.
I swear to God, I'm not. You had a debate inside the Situation Room with the nation's top infectious disease doctor, the man who was in charge, to a certain extent, of the nation's medical response to this. And all he said, he wants this to work. Everyone wants this to work. All he has said is, let's let the testing and the science decide. What you seem to be saying is, I've read a study out of Wuhan, and I decided.
Yeah, that's so unfair, John.
No, it's actually totally fair. And it's not even a study. It's just a report. Seems to be working, maybe in certain circumstances.
I'd rather have internists making trade policy than Navarro.
I actually would be on board with that too. I don't think there's anybody I would prefer. Oh, this is pretty funny. So let's play. Let's put up this Dr. Drew tweet. Do we have it? Yeah, here's a tweet. He goes, Dr. Drew is threatening people. This is from Yashar Ali's online reporter. Who does he work for? I'm not sure. And Dr. Drew is very upset because people are playing a compilation of his downplaying coronavirus. And he is suggesting that infringing on copyright laws is a crime. Now, he also doesn't know what copyright is, because I think the copyright he's looking for is RIGHT, like the rights to the copy, as opposed to copyright, which is what you do when you're working for an ad firm. And I think Dr. Drew is responding to the fact that Yashar Ali said that Dr. Drew is a snake oil salesman. Really terrible stuff here. What a disgrace. Now, to be fair, maybe Yashar Ali is not aware that Dr. Drew was the medical expert on Loveline for years with the guy from The Man Show and the Adam Carolla show, Adam Carolla. He may also not be aware that Dr. Drew ran I guess an institution for people who were fighting addiction. Of course, it was fully loaded with cameras and it was a reality show. I know people who worked on that reality show. They said that they have never been felt worse about their work in their entire lives. And whenever they had the opportunity to not work there, they wouldn't, because what they saw horrified them. He ended Celebrity Rehab back in 2013 after multiple cast member deaths. But let's take a look at the video that apparently Dr. Drew says will get us sued. I'm going to explain a concept. This is called fair use. Somebody has put together this compilation, and I'm using it to make a point that we have hucksters out there who are trying to monetize this stuff. Here is that compilation of Dr. Drew.
We predicted from the beginning that this is going to be worse than the flu.
It's way less virulent than the flu, so it's a reminder that you're more likely to die of influenza, so go ahead and get your flu shots. Mild, doesn't hurt anybody, That should be the headline. Way less serious than influenza. That's the headline.
You know what the 2% lethality thing is you have there? Are you talking about the coronavirus? I think it's less than 2%. It's like 0.02%. Less dangerous than influenza. Less dangerous than influenza.
It's got the man show.
Your probability of dying of coronavirus, much higher being hit by an asteroid, I would say.
The flu virus in this country is vastly more consequential, and nobody is talking about
this corona thing doesn't worry me
at
all.
It is a press-induced panic. I am angry about it. It is the flu.
If you're under 65 and you get it, you're going to have the flu, and you're going to be fine.
Oh my
It's
God.
going to be just like the flu. It's going to be almost identical. I can see it coming.
The Americans in 2020 panic is to hoard toilet paper. You know,
Right. And toilet paper and
antibacterial gel.
Right. In response to the flu, right?
A flu, and it's a different flu. And it's, if you notice, it's Corona 19, which means there's at least been 18 of these other ones.
Oh, yeah.
Pause it for 1 second.
Why do you think like...
Pause it for 1 second. Oh, yeah, he says. Oh, yeah. Now, how much reading do you have to do to find out that it's called COVID-19, not because there's been 18 others, but because it appeared in 2019? Like, how little reading about this as a doctor do you have to do to stop your call and say, well, actually, it's not that there's been 18 others of these? And the idea that there's a bunch of coronaviruses, of course there are. But this was called COVID-19 because it was found in 2019. It was the first time it was found in the human body. How little reading do you have to do as a doctor, to not know that? Just go, yeah, on your TV show on March 16th, 3 weeks ago, less. Go.
Which means there's at least been 18 of these other ones.
Oh, yeah.
Go to the movies.
Why do you think like the NBA now discussing the idea of playing without fans? And UCLA today announcing that their sports are going to be without fans.
I think that's a mistake.
Should the Olympics be canceled? That's funny.
Have you noticed less people out on the streets?
Oh, absolutely. Less people in the trains, for sure. Well, they told them, de Blasio told them not to ride the trains. And so they're not riding the trains. And so I am. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Say we do have 100,000 deaths in the country. Remember, we get 30,000 deaths from the flu. This is going to be, we predicted from the beginning that this is going to be worse than the flu. So we'd have to at least have 30,000 deaths for it to be worse than the flu.
But do we wait till 20,000 people die and then start panicking?
It's not going to happen.
Okay.
That's the point. It's not going to happen.
I believe you.
It's not.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty bad. Now we're up to over 10,000, I think, today who have died. That number is considered to be probably lower than the actual number because many people have died without actually being tested. I mean, it's nuts. These people it just goes into the ether. I mean, all of this too, with all these other Fox people. They bear a responsibility. Now, of course, it's because Donald Trump didn't want this to happen. And so he thought he could just, I don't know, wish it away. It's stunning. And we're seeing this problem now in churches too. Not all churches, obviously. Although, to be fair, Franklin Graham is saying that COVID-19 is happening because the world has turned its back on God. Here's a woman who is not concerned about, she's going to church, not concerned about this at all. This is via Eric Fernandez, because, of course, God's going to protect her.
Driving out of this Ohio parking lot is a woman who just attended a church service with dozens of other people, including children.
Can I ask you about your decision to go to church to be inside that building?
I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Aren't you concerned you could infect other people if you get sick inside?
No.
People who don't go to this
No.
church.
I'm covered in Jesus' blood. I'm covered in Jesus'
But what
blood.
about other people who don't go to this church who you might encounter?
All of these people go to this church.
No, but you're going to be in places where other people
I go to the grocery store every day. I'm in Walmart,
What?
Home Depot, all of those
But you
people.
could get them sick from what happens in
They
the
could
church.
get me sick, but they're not because I'm covered in his blood. Thank you very much.
Well, the good news is it turns out that Jesus' blood is invisible and does not stain. But I mean, I don't know where these people get this idea that you can be protected by Jesus' blood from a coronavirus. Does it work on the flu? Here is Kenneth Copeland. He's one of these. He's one of these guys who is this is a religious figure from Texas. And he has another way of getting rid of the COVID-19. Let's play this clip, number 12.
Almighty, strong, south wind, heat, burn this thing. In the name of Jesus. Satan, you bow your knees. You fall on your face. COVID-19. I blow the wind of God on you. You are destroyed forever. And you'll never be back. Thank you, our God. Let it happen. Cause it to happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's examples of people dying from all walks of life. The first person to die in Virginia was a guy, Pastor Landon Spradlin. He was mocking the idea of the coronavirus, went down to Mardi Gras to preach. Fat Tuesday, I guess that was the first week in March. On March 13th, he shared a Facebook message about comparing the swine flu and the coronavirus deaths. That came from Donald Trump, very similar. And apparently he felt it was an irrational frenzy and fear-mongering. He was mad about it by mid-March. His health took a turn for the worse. They drove back from New Orleans to their home in Virginia. He collapsed in North Carolina. He was taken to hospital in North Carolina. He had developed pneumonia in both lungs, tested positive for coronavirus. And after 8 days in intensive care, he passed away. I mean, I hope that we don't see massive amounts of these kind of deaths amongst these people who are so bold about it, and that they don't spread it to other people. But their sense of community seems to be rather narrowly tailored. Let's get to this clip. Donald Trump is asked about the delay in federal delivery of respirators. You remember the other day that Jared Kushner said, look, the states have their supplies. We have ours. And people were like, what, ours? What do you think that supply is? It's not yours. Federal government has these reserves for the sake of people. The national stockpile is for the sake of people. In fact, on the website, this is the Federal Public Health Emergency website. The Strategic National Stockpile was described as, quote, the nation's largest supply of life-saving pharmaceuticals and medical supplies for use in a public health emergency severe enough to cause local supplies to run out. Local supplies to run out. The description continued. When state, local, tribal, and territorial responders, that is, when state, local, tribal, and territorial responders request federal assistance to support their response efforts, the stockpile ensures that the right medicines and supplies get to those who need them most during an emergency. Well, after Jared Kushner got up there and said, those are ours, not the state's, that definition was disappeared from the website. And were replaced with the Strategic National Stockpile's role is to supplement state and local supplies during public health emergencies. Many states have products stockpiled as well. The supplies, medicines, and devices for life-saving care contained in the stockpile can be used as a short-term stopgap buffer when the immediate supply of adequate amounts, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, somebody called in and said we're in danger of losing our democracy. I mean, I think we have there's an argument that we haven't been terribly democratic, but these type of authoritarian things where you sort of change history to you change the definitions of things to address your own F-ups. That's one thing that you can do when you're an authoritarian regime. Here's another. They ask you about the failure to deliver timely deliveries of respirators. You're the president of the United States. How do you address that? What kind of question?
Records show that federal agencies did not begin.
Oh, stop it. Who are you with? By the way, who are you with? Who are you with?
The Associated Press. Agencies did begin bulk purchases of respirators and
are you ready?
masks
Are you ready?
mid-March.
Let me just answer your question because I know exactly. Same question you ask all the time. Ready? They have done an unbelievable job in delivering for the Associated Press, which is, not so great. Not like it used to be. The people that you're looking at, FEMA, the military, what they've done is a miracle. What they've done is a miracle in getting all of this stuff. What they've done for states is incredible. And you should be thanking them for what they've done, not always asking wise guy questions. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Wise guy questions. Where's the respirators? What a wise guy. I mean, it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse as more and more people become aware that this administration has effed up. Effed up in the response to coronavirus, effed up in response to the economic shock that we are suffering and going to suffer. In Florida, Rick Scott had set up the unemployment numbers and formula in such a way to diminish the number of people who are unemployed. Not the actual people who are unemployed, but just to diminish the official number of people unemployed. And now it's a crap show there. And they can't deliver the unemployment insurance that they need to. Meanwhile, what are Democrats doing? Are there committees right now assembling documents, working on timelines? Are there committees investigating how that former, as of 3 weeks ago, Republican fundraiser is now overseeing the largest supply chain, private supply chain, in his words, of personal protection equipment? Are they assessing how that guy built a business in 7 days to deliver 100 million masks? Well, apparently that's too far in the past. Here's Jim Clyburn saying that his new committee will not investigate the preparedness or the response. We're only going to investigate things going forward.
And that's what Speaker Pelosi is trying to do here, to get out in front of this, to protect the American people so that they can not only save lives, but we can keep fraud and abuse, profiteering, price gouging. We see that already. The governor of New York recently said that masks that he was spending 70 cents for, he's now having to spend $7 for. Is that past price gouging? I think it is. And that's what this committee is all about. This is not about the president of the United States or even the independent counsel or the inspector general. This is about focusing on how the money is spent, whether or not the people who are getting the money are actually working on behalf of the American people, or whether or not they're profiteering.
So this committee, it will only be looking at how the money is being spent and whether or not private businesses out there are price gouging. You're not going to look at all at the federal response and why it took so long to get a federal response going that would have saved lives, as Governor Pritzker just put it?
My understanding is that this committee will be forward looking. We're not going to be looking back on what the president may or may not have done back before this crisis hit. The crisis is with us. The American people are now out of work, millions of them out of work. The question is whether or not the money that's appropriated will go to support them and their families, or whether or not this money will end up in the pockets of a few profiteers, terrorists. And that's what I understand we are to do. If we are patterning this after the Truman Committee, and I spent the weekend looking deeply into the Truman Committee and what happened since March 1, 1941, when it was stood up and stayed up for 5 years and would prove to be very, very successful. And I'm trying to base my work on this committee on the history that's found with the work of that committee.
I mean, maybe there'll be another committee that will look at this failure to respond, or maybe not. Maybe we just look forward. We don't look back. I don't know how you're going to be able to do the work of policing these things if you don't look back at all. And I don't understand why, if you can set this committee up, you can't set up other committees. I mean, the Democrats are just completely afraid of being in any way dogged or aggressive on this. They will let the chips fall where they may because they are just convinced it's going to help them electorally. But this is the problem that with the Democrats and the way they've dealt with this before. This is Barack Obama's perspective on not looking at things like torture and lying us into a war, that this stuff festers, that it's not going to just melt away. It creates resentments. It creates anger. It is destabilizing. You cannot sweep this stuff under the rug. It's radioactive and it begins to eat away at the fibers of the rug. And then pretty soon you have no rug. And then it just starts eating through your feet. I don't know where I'm going with that metaphor, but it's bad. It's really bad. We didn't get any IMs today. I think I was up. Oh, maybe because we're not live on the audio. That's what it is. We may have to fix that. Let's try this again. Calling from a 308 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Nope. Calling from an 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Josh from Chicago.
Josh from Chicago. How are you, Josh?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. What's up?
I sort of wanted to push back against what that Australian caller was talking about earlier, sort of about the notion that people should like sort of just give up essentially. And I want to point him to essentially what happened with the Labor Party over the weekend. And I'm sure a lot of people are focused on a lot of other things. But Keir Starmer was elected Labor leader, replacing Jeremy Corbyn. And while he isn't necessarily like my first choice, a lot of the people he ended up stacking his shadow cabinet with, and a lot of his sort of priorities that he ran on, were essentially an extension of Corbynism, because the left had gained so much power within that party that there was no way he could stack his cabinet with sort of anyone from the old Labor right. A lot of the people, for example, Rebecca Long Bailey, who he was running against, ended up getting a very key cabinet post. And I'm not, obviously Biden isn't going to allow the same power that I think Starmer has allowed the Labor left. He's not as left as Starmer. Starmer did again campaigned on a lot of Corbyn's key policies, but I do think there is an opportunity for the left with a Democratic Party led by Biden to at least have some influence. And I think we on the left should be paying close attention to what just happened with the Labor Party.
Yeah, of course. I mean, at the very least, like, look, how do you not try? Like, how do you not try? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, but how do you not try?
I mean, yeah, I think it's worth definitely trying, but like, I also think you see like, part of the problem is that the left here in the U.S. just isn't. There's systemic differences between the UK left and what's going on here. I mean, there's no like think tanks funded within the Labor Party to prevent rail nationalization. The way there's think tanks funded to prevent Medicare for all. But at the very least, we should learn how to gain that power that the groups like Momentum had, because you essentially got a soft left Labor leader who's now having to kowtow to the Corbyn left wing of the party. And I think it creates a very interesting dynamic that's workable.
I agree. Appreciate the call, Josh. Hope you're staying safe.
Yep.
Bye. Is this Jamie?
Hello?
Jamie?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is this me? Oh, all right. Wow. I nailed it this time by remembering to listen on the line and not the YouTube.
Yeah. All right. Beautiful. All right. Well, this also sounds good.
Oh, yeah. I'm using my microphone.
All right. Great. All right. Well, let's take another call. I just saw that you were there. You should get a text me when you were on the line. I didn't realize. I would have brushed you on earlier. Let's go. Here, let's go. Take the next call. Calling from a 708 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Emily. I'm from Carbondale, Illinois.
Hello, Emily. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to for a general, I know it's been we had a pretty messed up primary here in Illinois, because that was one of the first coronavirus type things where there was a push to have the governor push it back. But one bright spot was, and we got a progressive candidate in the 12th to run against Mike Boss. That's Southern Illinois. So, and it was a real surprise because he ran with less than $60,000. I don't even think he ran any TV ads. And I know the people who staff his campaign, and they said, the woman who's in charge of his social media said that she was pretty fatalistic about his chances, and this just happened out of the blue, and it is honestly really great. And I'm so happy. And nobody really talks about this candidate. His name is Ray Lindsay, because this is not really, despite the 12th being one of the so-called flippable districts. But yeah, I'm glad that this happened. And I just wanted to bring attention to Ray Lindsay.
Ray Lindsay, will you send me an email at majorityreporters@gmail.com, and we will try and reach out one way or another, maybe, and do an interview.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Big, important state Supreme Court. I think is it the 7th? I don't know when it is in Wisconsin. I think it's the 7th. But, I'm not going to ask people to go out and vote if they haven't already done an absentee ballot, because it's dangerous. It's a little bit dangerous. I don't know what the answer is. If you feel very confident that you can go out, stay away from people, obviously, wear a mask. Hopefully other people will be wearing a mask, but there's very few polling places. I mean, it's a mess. I can't believe it. I mean, I can't believe it, but I can't believe it. Calling from a 650 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Terry calling from Santa Barbara, California.
Terry from Santa Barbara. What's on your mind?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I noticed when Biden showed back up from his cave, I came up with a theory that the reason he would stop and kind of equivocate and sort of defer back to the interviewer is that he forgot that he was on live TV, because he had been sort of in the habit of doing takes and filming to tape. Because I haven't seen him do that so much recently.
I don't know. I think he gets a little bit lost in his words, and he just says like, I'm going to just chalk this up to being polite. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, that was just a fun pet theory that I had. I guess the other more serious issue that I had been following before COVID-19 took over the world was the exit poll discrepancies that were not widely reported. And there's a website, I believe I sent you guys an email about it, but it's TMDS research, or no, TDMS research .com. And they basically trolled the CNN exit poll reporting website. And it turns out that they report some initial results, and then according to this guy's research, they have it set up so that they'll correct the exit polls to match the election results, which is unique to the United States. And I was wondering if you'd heard anything about that, or have any insight on how the exit polls
I can tell you that this is always a question after every election. It was a question in every election that we've had. It usually favors one person or another. You can go back and you can Google this question. Why are exit polls unreliable? And you can see, I would imagine, for as long as the internet goes back and records things, you will see articles on this. Largely, the big issue is that young people are far more interested in talking to exit pollers than older people. And if you look at the final results from an election, the exit polling suggests that that young people turnout is like, I don't know, twice as large as it appears to be at the end of the election. That's the big thing. Maybe not twice, 1.5 or something like that. That's the big answer. So, whichever, it was Obama, I think in 2008, it was generally whatever candidate is favored by younger people, that's when the exit polling looks like they're going to win, or that they are going to win by a bigger margin than ultimately comes out. That's the big reason.
Okay, because there's some other details that they cited in this guy's research, which was that.
Bear with me 1 second. Hold on. Is that coming from me? Shoot. I just accidentally turned on I'm getting some audio that's coming through. You can't hear it?
I can hear it.
Oh, you can hear it. All right. Well, oh yeah, I see
I
what
can
it
no
is.
longer hear it.
Okay, great. All right. What was the other thing? So I would basically say that is a conspiracy theory that has little resonance, but it's not. This is not the first time that this has come up. It's come up for every election that I can ever remember.
Hmm. So I guess there's some more sort of background in this that, like in 2016, there was demands to publish the initial exit poll results, like the original exit poll results, and from that point on, they canceled exit polling for the Democratic primary, and then I haven't verified this, and I only have one source on it, so yeah, it could just be
Yes, it is
BS. But the other thing was that the discrepancies did not appear in the Republican primaries, or like the exit polls were a lot more accurate.
That would also make sense.
The results.
That would also make sense because you have a much more homogenous group of people.
Okay, and then I guess the one last issue is that apparently precincts that use electronic voting machines versus precincts that use paper ballots had, like, the electronic voting machine showed basically all of the discrepancies, whereas the paper ballots were within supposedly normal margin of error.
Who do you think goes to paper ballots? Who do you think gets paper ballots versus electronic?
I don't know.
Well, take a guess.
Paper ballots should go to poorer precincts.
Right.
But it just, I don't know. And I haven't, again, single source.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just addressed it. I mean, this is what I would do. I would, if you're really into it, go read a dozen stories about it on either side of that question. And you will have the answer, I'm sure.
And I mean, I think this also goes in, relates to the systemic voter suppression reported by Tom Hartman, I think.
Well, there's definitely systemic voter suppression, and it's quite possible that part of this noise, part of it is people go in, they think they voted because they voted provisional ballots, and the provisional ballots are not counted.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely, I would imagine, accounts for some of it, but not enough maybe to make a difference in the outcome of the election, or those provisional ballots would be counted. But it doesn't make up for all of it.
Yeah.
Go read about it.
And
go read about it. I mean, you seem to be very, very interested in it. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
You were hanging on the phone for 60 minutes. You can read about this stuff. People need to do that. If you really are convinced about these things from one website that is a single source, then my suggestion to you would be read 3 other sources. Read 5.
Okay, fair enough.
I appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you.
Right. Got some good news. This is from politics and state government reporter for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, Molly Beck, is reporting that Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers issues orders shutting down Tuesday's election, delaying it until June 9th. I imagine, now this is, according to the governor, it could end up in the Supreme Court yet today, but the bottom line is the people of Wisconsin, they don't care about fighting between Democrats and Republicans. They're scared. So he is shutting it down, I would imagine, with the help of some health official from the State Department. The state's health department. They did this in Ohio. DeWine shut it down based upon the health department. I don't know how they're doing it, but it's an executive order that moves the state spring election to June 9th. And It'll be interesting to see if the state Supreme Court, what they do with it. They are all Republicans, and I mean Republicans, not just appointed Republicans. They only care about doing the Republicans' bidding. All right, final call of the day. Brendan, pick a number.
17.
17. I should have said 1 through 10, or let's say 2 through 10.
Man, terrible pick. Sorry about that. Okay,
9?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if we got one that starts with a 9. Going through it, going through it, going through it, going through it. Calling from a 973 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, this is Dalton. I'm from New Jersey.
Dolson?
Yeah, Dalton.
Dolphin.
Hi.
Hi. Jamie, did you
Hi,
hear that? Dolphin.
I'm sorry?
I was telling Jamie. She likes dolphins.
Oh, hi.
True.
Um,
Guilty as charged.
Well, yeah, it's not to break it, but a part of my question, I'm a high school senior, and a part of my journalism class, we're going into conflicts of interest. And as a part of that, I wanted to bring up how, well, not really anymore, as he's apparently he has the coronavirus, but Andrew Cuomo, and when he was on his show daily,
Chris
his conversations.
Cuomo. Chris Cuomo.
Sorry,
Chris Cuomo.
Chris Cuomo. Chris Cuomo. Yep. When he was on his show, he would have conversations with Andrew Cuomo, his brother, and how that just is very much a conflict of interest, and how it could most certainly be seen as some sort of like propaganda, even if that's not what their intention is. It's just kind of, as a journalist, which he is, he should definitely be taking the proper precautions to kind of stay away from that, as they have a very close relationship being brothers, and there's definitely places where Chris Cuomo could be pushing his brother further, especially when discussing how he'd been cutting Medicare and how he'd been slashing the number of beds in hospitals coming up to the crisis.
I think you're absolutely right. In fact, I mean, that's the most important part of the dynamic. The other part of the dynamic is that it's also it's a conflict of interest insofar as like, wait, why are you going on his show as opposed to other shows? Like, you know, you're also helping your brother out. Of course. I mean, they could, you know, he could interview him, you know, as like a fun, like, you know, public interest, you know, public or a human interest story. That would be fine. But no, every time Andrew Cuomo wants to be on CNN, they should be bringing in someone else, either a reporter or a different show or what. I mean, it's absurd.
He should certainly recuse himself as Andrew Cuomo comes on. I mean, CNN has 24 hours of news. There's certainly a different section or someone else.
Definitely. The management should say, hey, Chris, this is not kosher. We're a news organization. You can't do it. I mean, you know, if you want to do it, like, what was it like growing up in the Cuomo household every now and then? Yeah, I guess. But to have him come on and be like news stories like this, no, absolutely not. You're right.
And, you know, that's not even to mention at the end of those interviews, they have like a fun piece talking about, you know, oh, what it was like, you know, like the whole call your mom thing at the end. And it's definitely much needed humor, but it should be humor coming from someone else, because it can definitely feed the, as we're seeing on Twitter, they're like, oh, Cuomo should run for president. Cuomo should run for president.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Having those pieces of levity, especially with his brother, is just.
I just think that it should be exclusively in that realm. Once every 6 months, maybe, you know, let him have some fun. But to actually, in terms of like news reports, particularly in this context, absolutely, you're absolutely right. You're going to do well in school. Appreciate the call.
Thank you. How you doing?
Jamie, what's going on with you?
Oh, wow. Well, I was having a pretty chill few days. I took a bike ride to Prospect Park on Saturday. It was pretty nice out, and saw a bunch of people doing that thing that New Yorkers always do in early spring, where they're just like shivering on blankets and benches, hoping that the sun comes back for a second. So that gave some sense of normalcy. I did wonder if people were following all the rules. I kept looking around like, is this okay? It seems like there's a lot of people here, but I've been kind of a mole person lately. So going outside, I correctly predicted that I would remember that I liked going outside.
I'm worried about my kids.
Nice.
My kids are just, I think they're afraid of my kids. It's going to be, I mean, hopefully we don't have too much longer of this, but it's going to be interesting to see how kids react to just the idea of my kids are nervous about seeing people at the prospect of it. Yeah. Well,
Are they always nervous about seeing people? Or
no.
It's,
I mean, that's what I'm saying. They're convinced that we got a delivery the other day, and both my kids were hiding in the the behind the refrigerator. I'm like, what? They're not even coming in. They're dropping it off right out front, and they're worried. We don't want to.
Better they take it too seriously than not seriously enough, right?
That's true. That is true. There's only so much a
You did
7-year-old
too
can do.
good a
Exactly. My 7-year-old now washes his hand though every time he goes to the bathroom. That's good.
Yeah, silver linings.
Indeed. All right. Well, what's on the Antifada this week, Jamie?
Oh, well, I'm so glad you asked. We have an episode out now with Peter Fraze. He is a writer for Jacobin and other publications, and he wrote a really good book called Four Futures that came out a few years ago on Verso Books. And we talked to him about what future we might be headed for right now. We talked a lot about the bad future, the exterminism one, for obvious reasons, but we try to end things on a positive note always. So we also talked about the socialism and communism futures from his book. And I try not to be too much of a bummer on the show. I try to end on a high note,
Indeed. I think we've had him on this program. I think.
Yeah, he's.
Pretty sure, yeah.
I'll have to look that up. He's a very smart, very nice guy. I think his book was limited in some ways, but he's very quick to acknowledge those limitations. Like the idea that we could use a UBI as a non-reformist reform to sort of peacefully transition to a socialist or communist future. I had some troubleshooting notes with that one, but I still like the book in whole. It's really good.
I just looked it up when we had him. Yeah, we had him on a couple of times, I think, back in the day. But yes, listen to Jamie's, then listen to go back and listen to him talk about the delusions of the tech bro intelligentsia. And also, I think, yeah. All right. Well, check out the Antifada, folks. What's that?
Also, I know people are looking for maybe a little bit of relief from thinking about all of these things in the news. And to that end, I've got a new Vampire Castle coming out soon with Leslie Lee III from Struggle Session, wherein we talk about Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
There you go. Throwback Thursday on, I don't know when you're coming out. All right. Well, thank you, Jamie. We will talk to you tomorrow. And for the rest of you folks, we will also talk to you tomorrow. Hit it, Matt.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie fall. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost.